The morning light seeps through the slats of wooden blinds, spreading across the bedroom in golden streaks. I wake to the sound of the coffee maker, its rhythmic bubbling reminiscent of a metronome. But it's not Michael in the kitchen. He left an hour ago, leaving behind the scent of aftershave and the familiar sense of absence. The house on the outskirts of San Francisco that we built together looks like a dream from a postcard. White walls, wooden floors, perfectly curated artwork. It's a place where everything feels so impeccably right that it seems unshakable. But that perfection weighs on me. It's like armor, concealing an emptiness. I brew some tea and turn on a podcast about books I'll probably never read. The host's voice is warm and enveloping, like a cozy blanket. Yet I feel irritation. Why does everyone else seem to find joy in such small things? Why can't I? I stare out the window at the faint mist rising and try to articulate what I'm missing. The words don't come. My day is mapped out to the last detail. Morning rituals, a trip to the gym, a few hours spent reading a book I chose simply because it was prominently displayed at the store. In the evening, Michael will come home and we'll have dinner as usual, discussing his work. He has a brilliant career as a lawyer, and every word he says seems charged with energy. Sometimes I feel like my life is merely a shadow of his success. I catch myself staring at my hand, where the imprint of my wedding ring still lingers. I occasionally take it off when I'm alone. It feels harmless, yet at the same time like a betrayal. Or maybe a protest against myself. For days now, I've been considering starting a new project, maybe enrolling in a painting class, or trying to keep a journal, like I used to in school. But every morning, standing by the window with a cup of tea, I realize that nothing changes. I feel trapped in an invisible snare where every detail of my life screams perfection, and yet I feel like a puppet. Today is no different. The silence of the house becomes deafening. I don't turn off the podcast even after it ends, just to have something playing. Sometimes I hear my inner voice whispering, "You could leave. You could choose a different future." Sunday evening stretches lazily, as it often does in a house where nothing ever happens. I place a pot of pasta on the stove when I hear the sound of a car outside. Michael sits in his armchair with his laptop, not even glancing up. "Are we expecting someone?" I ask, trying to mask my irritation. His casual indifference sometimes grates on me. "Owen's stopping by. I forgot to mention it," he says offhandedly, as though it's not news. I feel a slight tremor inside, a mix of curiosity and unease. Owen, his son from his first marriage, is a rare visitor to our home. The last time I saw him was at some family gathering, where he seemed as carefree and nonchalant as he looks in his social media photos. I dry my hands on a towel as I hear a car door slam. There's the sound of boots in the entryway, and then he's there, standing in the doorway. In ripped jeans, a dark t-shirt with an almost illegible band logo, and a leather jacket. His arms are covered in tattoos, sharp lines like a foreign language I can't decipher. His smile is bold, almost defiant, but there's something else in his eyes. Something elusive. "Hey," he says, as if he already owns the place. "Hi, Owen," I reply, feeling like my smile is too tight. "Dad, where are your keys? Locked my car." He asks Michael, already walking further into the house without waiting for an answer. He moves confidently, as if he knows this home intimately, though I'm certain he's only spent a handful of days here, back when we first moved in. In the kitchen, he leans against the counter like we're old friends, not near strangers. "Cozy place you've got. Too cozy for me," he says, scanning the room. His voice carries a faint accent. Not of language, but of experience. He speaks like someone who's seen a lot and is used to being an outsider. "Too cozy. Is that a compliment or not?" I ask with a slight smirk, though inside I feel a shift, like water trembling in a glass after a sudden nudge. He shrugs and smiles. "It's an observation." Michael returns with the keys and hands them to him without looking up from his phone. Their brief exchange doesn't feel familial to me. More like two people trying hard not to touch on difficult topics. "I'll stay for a couple of weeks." Owen says as he heads back toward his car. A couple of weeks? My voice comes out louder than I intended. Need a break. Dad said it's fine. He looks at me with a smirk, and I realize I can't read this man. When he leaves, Michael comments, almost absent-mindedly, he needs time to figure things out. His tone carries no surprise, no irritation, and it seems no particular interest. I turn off the stove, realizing I've forgotten the pasta, now overcooked. One thought circles in my mind. This isn't just about figuring things out. Owen brings something into this house, something I can't yet name. Michael checks his watch and suggests, how about going to the fair downtown? Something different for a Sunday evening. His voice is even, as if he's proposing something routine. I nod, trying to mask a flicker of surprise. We rarely do anything spontaneous, and I'm eager to grab at any chance to break the monotony. Owen, half reclined on the couch with his phone in hand, glances up. I'm in. Hope it's not too boring. He adds with a touch of sarcasm. An hour later, the three of us are walking down a bustling street awash with colorful lights, street performers, and food stalls. The air is filled with the scents of caramel, grilled meat, and something spicy. People laugh, their voices rising above the hum of the crowd, and the glow of string lights reflects off puddles left by an earlier rain. I almost forget our relentlessly even-keeled daily life. Here, everything feels different. Alive, a little chaotic. Owen stops at a stall where a man in a worn sweater is selling drawings. His table is cluttered with watercolors and pencil sketches. The artist speaks about his work with such passion that I catch myself leaning in, examining the pieces with genuine interest. How much is this one? Owen asks, pointing to a particular drawing. The sketch shows a woman with her face tilted toward the sky, surrounded by a whirlwind of chaotic lines, like the wind is trying to tear her apart. It's strange, even unsettling, but there's something mesmerizing about it. It's about inner conflict, the artist explains. When you're trying to hold yourself together, but something inside always wants to break free. I'll take it, Owen decides before I can say anything. He pulls out cash and pays. We continue walking, and I assume he bought the piece impulsively, just to fill the moment. But later, as we stand outside a cafe with cups of coffee in hand, Owen hands me the drawing. It reminded me of you, he says, his voice free of irony. He looks directly into my eyes, and the weight of his gaze stirs a strange unease. It's as if he sees something in me that no one else does. I look at the drawing again and realize that something in it resonates. The swirling lines around the woman, her upward gaze. It feels like the artist captured a moment I could never put into words. Thank you, I say, tucking the sketch into my bag. We rejoin Michael, who is smiling as he studies the menu at a food stall. But I know the evening has already become something far more significant for me. One morning, a few days after the fair, I hear Owen calling me from the garage. His voice sounds light, but carries a note of insistence. I open the door to find him sorting through old boxes left behind after the move. Dust swirls in the air as he lifts one. Mind helping? Honestly, this stuff is better off trashed or burned, he says with a smirk. I grab one of the boxes and we haul it toward the driveway. Outside, the soft morning light bathes everything in a quiet calm, broken only by the sound of birds. Suddenly, a loud crash shatters the stillness. I flinch and turn toward the noise. Near the fence at the front of the house lies a cyclist, his bike twisted awkwardly beside him. Owen drops the box immediately and runs toward the man. I'm frozen for a moment, stunned by how fast he reacts. He crouches beside the man, who's clutching his knee and grimacing in pain. Are you okay? Owen asks, his voice steady and assured. Think I hurt my knee, the man replies with a wince. Don't move for now, Owen says, glancing back at me. Can you grab some water? I nod and rush into the house, battling a growing sense of unease. When I return with a bottle of water and a first aid kit, Owen has already inspected the injury and is calmly talking to the cyclist. Do you live nearby? Owen asks as the man takes a sip of water. Yeah, a couple of streets over, the man answers. Thanks for helping. Most people just stare. I watch Owen, his movements deliberate and composed. This isn't the sarcastic, slightly rebellious person I'd known up until now. In this moment, he seems genuine, sincere. I feel as if I'm seeing him clearly for the first time. We help the man to his feet. He thanks us, climbs gingerly onto his bike, and rides off slowly. Owen watches him leave, then turns to me. Well, at least something interesting happened around here. He jokes, his tone light. You reacted fast, I remark, trying to mask my admiration. Just habit. Sometimes you have to act first, think later, he replies. Then, looking directly at me, he adds, You can do that too, right? His question catches me off guard. I want to say I'm not sure, but instead I nod. As we return to the garage, I notice a faint tremble in my hands. It's not from stress. It's something else. A realization that in Owen, I see a quality I deeply lack. A vitality. A readiness to act rather than simply observe. In that moment, I begin to understand. He's brought a sense of motion into my life that I hadn't felt in a long time. For the past few days, Owen has been spending most of his time in the guest room. Michael doesn't question it, absorbed as he is by work in the evenings or falling asleep in front of the TV. But my curiosity begins to gnaw at me. What is Owen doing behind that closed door? Sometimes I hear the scratch of a pencil on paper, sometimes the rhythmic pulse of music, muffled as if he's deliberately trying not to draw attention. One evening, I hear the front door slam as Owen leaves. Michael is engrossed in reading the news on his tablet, so I seize the moment. The guest room door is unlocked. Inside, papers are scattered across the desk. I step closer and see sketches. Strange, abstract. Among them are figures of people encased in lines resembling interwoven cages. One drawing catches my eye. A silhouette of a woman with her gaze lifted upward, surrounded by a whirlwind of chaos. My heart skips. That's me. It's not a replica, but the lines, the shape of the face, the gestures, they all unmistakably depict me. Beside the sketches lies a notebook filled with scrawled notes. I flip through its pages. The words are hurried, as if written in bursts of thought. People trap themselves in their own cages. They build the bars around them. But don't they create the prisons themselves? One phrase lingers in my mind. Sometimes chaos is the only way to feel alive. I tear my eyes away from the notebook and glance at another sketch. It shows a person trying to break down a door, beyond which lies a blinding white light. A realization washes over me. Owen is creating something far more profound than drawings. This feels like the beginning of an art installation. The theme, blurring the line between freedom and routine. You think too much? A voice says behind me. I turn, startled, to find Owen standing in the doorway. His face is calm, but there's a flicker of tension in his eyes. He's caught me looking through his work. Sorry, I mumble, feeling awkward. It was open. I didn't mean to. He raises a hand, cutting me off. Don't apologize, these are just drafts. Only ideas. I nod, but my gaze drifts back to the sketch that looks like me. It's interesting. Deep, I say, searching for the right words. Thanks, he replies, stepping into the room. He sits at the desk and begins gathering the sketches into a neat pile. His movements are deliberate, as though he's used to people invading his space. You know, you could create something like this too. Me? I laugh, but it sounds strained. I'm not a creative person. That's more your thing. He looks at me as if he sees something I can't. You can be anything if you stop believing it's impossible. His words catch me off guard. I don't respond, and he says nothing more, returning to his sketches. But in the silence, there's a weight. Something significant that lingers, gripping me more than I want to admit. That night, I lie in bed, his words circling my mind. The sketches, the chaos, the freedom. Maybe he sees something in me that I'm afraid to acknowledge. Or maybe he's trying to show me that everyone has a choice, to stay trapped or to try breaking free. The next morning at breakfast, Michael announces, "You could go to Los Angeles with Owen. He needs to pick up some documents from his mother. It's only a couple of days." He says it as though it's no more than a simple change of scenery, but I catch a faint hint of insistence in his tone. "Are you serious? Why can't you handle it yourself?" Owen asks lazily, poking at his plate of scrambled eggs with a fork. "I'm swamped with work," Michael replies curtly without looking up from his phone. His tone leaves no room for argument. The discussion is over. By evening, we're in the car. Owen is driving, his window slightly open, letting the wind tousle his hair. Soft music plays in the background, soon overpowered by the hum of the road. The first few hours pass in silence. I sit staring out the window, watching barren landscapes transition into rolling hills. Owen glances at me occasionally, but says nothing. "Do you like traveling?" I finally break the silence. He smirks. "Depends on where. Sometimes it's just a way not to stay in one place." The statement feels almost like a confession. "But you came back here," I point out. "Does this place mean something to you?" He shakes his head. "I came back because I had to. It's easier to hit pause here." We fall silent again, but this time the quiet feels less awkward. After a while, he turns up the music, a classic rock song. To my surprise, I recognize it. We both start humming the chorus, and it turns into an effortless, playful exchange. Our lunch stop is at a small roadside diner. After ordering sandwiches and coffee, we sit at a wooden table by the window. The conversation flows naturally. Owen starts sharing stories about his travels, including the time he got lost in a small Italian town. It was a rainy evening, and I ended up under the awning of this shoe shop. The owner, an old man, saw me standing there and invited me inside. We sat in his shop, me drinking his cheap wine, him telling me about making shoes. He said every pair was a story. I didn't understand it then, but I think he was trying to say that our lives are like that too. Something we craft ourselves, like his shoes. I listen, captivated. His voice softens as he talks about the old man and how that encounter shifted his perspective. "And did you find your meaning then?" I ask cautiously. He smiles faintly. "I don't think meaning is something you find, but sometimes it's enough to stop being afraid to look for it." His words linger with me like an echo as we continue down the road. Later, when night falls, Owen switches to classical music. The calm, soothing melodies seem to encapsulate the day. I glance at his profile, the strong lines of his face, the hint of a smirk, and realize he's not just the rebellious figure Michael sees him as. There's something deeper, something that makes me reflect. At the hotel where we stop for the night, I lie awake long after he's gone to his room. His words replay in my mind over and over. I catch myself realizing something unsettling yet exhilarating. Being near him makes me feel alive, truly alive. It's as though he knows how to awaken something long dormant inside me. After returning from Los Angeles, I'm haunted by a strange feeling, like I've crossed an invisible threshold between two worlds. My usual rhythm of life feels even duller now. Michael, as always, is fully immersed in his work. One day, standing by the window with a cup of tea, I make a spontaneous decision. "What do you think about a picnic by the ocean?" I ask Owen as he walks into the kitchen. He looks surprised but nods. "Why not?" Finally, something out of the ordinary. We pack food, blankets, and an old picnic basket I haven't used in years. Within an hour, we're speeding down a winding road toward the lighthouse. The ocean stretches endlessly, its blue waves shimmering under the sun. The wind playfully tugs at my hair, making me feel free, if only for a moment. We find a spot on a slope near the lighthouse, lay out the blanket, and unpack sandwiches, fruit, and a bottle of chilled lemonade. The breeze is a bit cool, but the sun is warm. For a brief time, I forget everything except this moment. "Could you see yourself living somewhere like this?" Owen asks, gazing into the distance. I think about it. Maybe. It's peaceful, but too isolated. Sometimes isolation is exactly what you need to find yourself, he replies, taking a bite of an apple. We laugh as we watch seagulls fight over scraps of food we toss their way. Their bold cries and flapping wings add a childlike simplicity to the picnic. For a moment, everything feels easy. When we finish eating, Owen pulls a notebook from his bag. Want to see? He asks, holding it out to me. I open it and find new sketches. This time, they're less chaotic, but still brimming with emotion. One drawing depicts the silhouette of a woman sitting at the edge of a cliff, her hair blowing in the wind as she gazes at the sky. It makes me pause. Did you draw me again? I ask, looking up. He smiles. Inspiration is hard to control. You remind me of someone on the verge of something important. I try to respond, but no words come. The wind carries the scent of salt and the murmur of waves. In that moment, I feel as though I truly am on the edge, unsure of where the path might lead. You look happy here, he says suddenly, like you've stopped trying to be perfect. His voice is quiet, but his words hit me straight in the heart. I laugh, but it sounds forced. It's just a good place. It makes everything else fade away. He nods, but I sense he sees more than I'm ready to admit. The ocean roars below, and his gaze seems to uncover something in me that I'm trying to hide. On the drive back, I remain silent, lost in my thoughts. Something shifted today. Or perhaps I've begun to notice something that was always there, something I've been too afraid to face. Night descended on our house with an unexpected ferocity. Outside, the wind howled, thunder shook the walls, and flashes of lightning illuminated the outlines of the garden in sharp, fleeting detail. Michael was still working late, and I lay in bed, trying to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. The storm seemed to speak in a language I had yet to understand. I rise, not bothering to turn on the lights, and make my way to the kitchen. The sound of the rain is hypnotic, its rhythm weaving through my thoughts, washing away the chaos. By the window, I see Owen. His silhouette is stark against the bursts of lightning, a cup in his hand. Can't sleep? He asks, turning to face me. His voice is soft, but it carries over the drumming of the rain. I nod and step closer. Storms always make me feel small, like I'm part of something vast and uncontrollable. He gazes out the window, then tilts his head toward the sky. I used to love storms, he says quietly, but once a storm took someone from me. I freeze, unsure of what he means. He doesn't continue right away, as if weighing his words. It was in Australia. I was traveling with a friend. A storm hit us in the mountains. It was beautiful and wild, like this one. But that time, it ended badly. He slipped off the trail. I tried to help, but... He pauses, taking a sip from his cup. Since then, I've looked at storms differently. His voice is steady, but I hear the pain beneath it. Not the kind that demands attention, but the quiet, enduring sort that stays with you because you know it will never leave. Do you blame yourself? I ask gently. He turns to me, his eyes deep and shadowed in the dim light. Of course, but over time you learn to live with it. As strange as it sounds, moments like that remind you we're not invincible. Life isn't guarantees. It's just choices. Sometimes we make the right ones. Sometimes we don't. I wrap my arms around myself, seeking warmth. His words unsettle me. I too am afraid of choices, hiding in my glass world where everything feels safe and unchanging. Sensing my unease, Owen speaks again. A storm is nature's way of reminding us that chaos can be beautiful. You're not afraid of the rain, are you? So why are you afraid to live? His question catches me off guard. I move closer to the window, watching as lightning slices through the sky. His words linger in my mind like the echo of a flash, and I feel something inside me begin to shift. The storm rages on, and we stand there together by the window, saying nothing more. Our wedding anniversary with Michael passes mundanely, almost mechanically. He hands me a box containing an expensive bracelet, and I smile, thanking him. It all feels so predictable that I barely suppress a yawn. Then he announces, I got tickets to an amusement park. Why not spend the evening doing something different? I'm surprised. Michael doesn't usually enjoy the chaos and noise of such places. But before I can ask why, he calls Owen to join us. It'll be fun, he says with an unusual enthusiasm. I smile back, but something about the invitation feels off, as if he's trying to push us together while keeping himself at a distance. The park is bright, loud, and full of life. Carousel lights shimmer, music blares from speakers, and the crowd buzzes with laughter and excited screams. Michael quickly loses interest. After just 2 rides, he decides to stay on a bench with his phone, leaving Owen and me alone. Looks like it's our evening, Owen remarks with a light smirk. His tone is casual, but I sense something deeper in his gaze, an understanding of how lost I feel. We walk past a giant Ferris wheel, and he unexpectedly suggests, "Want to go up?" I've always felt that the world makes more sense from above. I nod, and within minutes we're ascending, away from the noise and chaos below. The gondola rocks gently as the city spreads out beneath us, a glowing quilt of lights. When we reach the top, Owen turns to me. His gaze is steady but not overwhelming. Do you feel it? He asks softly. Like we've finally stepped out from behind the glass. His words echo something deep within me. I nod, unsure of what to say. Below, everything looks so small, as though it belongs to another world I no longer recognize. Sometimes I think people don't live the way they're supposed to, he continues, his voice calm yet piercing. They build walls around themselves and then complain they can't break through. Have you ever thought about breaking yours? His words strike a chord I didn't know was there. I want to argue, to tell him it's not that simple. But instead I ask, and you? Have you found your freedom? He smiles, but it's tinged with sadness rather than joy. I'm still looking. But one thing I've learned, you'll never find it while living for others and forgetting yourself. The gondola begins its descent, and I feel reality closing back in around me. But his words linger, like the afterglow of the park's lights. When we step off, I see Michael, still immersed in his phone. His usual indifference doesn't anger me. It only leaves me with a strange sense of clarity, as if I'm finally seeing our life for what it truly is. Owen walks beside me silently, his presence a quiet reminder that the walls he spoke of exist only in my mind. The evening was unusually quiet. Michael was working late, and the house, usually filled with the sound of his phone calls or the hum of the TV, had settled into calm silence. I was still turning Owen's words from the Ferris wheel over in my mind when I heard his voice from the hall. Come up to the roof. There's something worth seeing, he called, not waiting for a response. I hesitated at first, but curiosity won out. On the roof, he had set up an improvised corner. An old chair, battery-powered lamps casting a soft glow, and a small thermos of coffee. The wind tousled his hair, but he seemed calm, even pensive. Did you do this for yourself? I asked as I sat in the chair next to him. For us, he replied, looking at me with an intensity that seemed to see more than I was ready to reveal. Sometimes you just need a change in perspective to understand what's really going on. We sat together, looking out at the city. The windows of the houses twinkled with light. Distant car horns honked faintly. The view, which I usually found chaotic, felt strangely harmonious tonight. We talked. At first about small things, movies he liked, his travels. But then the conversation grew deeper. I opened up about how I often felt like a stranger in my own life, how afraid I was of change. Owen listened without interrupting, his gaze steady as if he were absorbing every word. You're not the only one, he said after a pause. People fear change because it's hard, but sometimes hard is the best thing that can happen to us. I wanted to respond, but at that moment he turned toward me. His eyes shimmered in the soft light of the lamps, and I felt the air between us grow heavy, almost tangible. Then he asked softly, "May I?" I didn't have a chance to say anything. My gaze, my silence had already answered him. He leaned in, and our lips met. It was a gentle, tentative kiss, as if testing uncharted waters. When he pulled back, I looked at him, unable to hide the wave of emotions washing over me. We stayed on the roof for a long time after that, enveloped by the quiet night, the city stretching endlessly below us, and the unspoken words that lingered in the air. The next morning, Owen appears in the kitchen with a suitcase. His expression is serious, lacking its usual lightness. Michael, oblivious to the shift in his mood, exchanges a few curt phrases with him while scrolling through news on his tablet. "I'm leaving for New York," Owen says, as if it's of no consequence. "Already?" Michael asks, sounding surprised but not genuinely interested. "Well, I hope things work out for you there." Owen nods, but his gaze lingers on me. It's as though he's waiting for something, some sign. But I can't respond. Inside, I feel a storm raging. Loss, confusion, and tenderness colliding into one. After Michael leaves, Owen steps closer. He holds out an envelope. "I'm not good at goodbyes," he says. "So I wrote this." I take the letter, our fingers brushing for a brief moment. That touch feels as significant as our kiss on the roof. He looks at me for a long time, as if trying to memorize every detail, then picks up his suitcase and walks out without looking back. I remain alone in the kitchen, holding the envelope. My heart feels heavy, as if part of me left with him. I go upstairs, sit on the bed, and open the letter. "You taught me to see beauty in what I once thought was mundane. You showed me that there's something more beneath the routine. I hope I changed something in you too. You deserve to feel alive, not just exist. To make choices for yourself, not for others. I'm leaving because it's what's right for both of us. But a part of me will always stay with you. Owen." I read the letter again and again. His words resonate as a truth I've been too afraid to admit. He's right. I've been stuck in my life, too scared to step into the unknown. But now, that step feels inevitable. That evening, Michael comes home late. He talks about work, about bringing in a big new client. His voice fades into background noise, unable to penetrate my thoughts. I sit at the kitchen table with Owen's letter in my hands, feeling something new stirring inside me. It isn't just regret about Owen. It's the realization that I can no longer live the way I have been. When Michael asks why I'm so quiet, I decide for the first time in a long while to tell the truth. I think we stopped being happy together a long time ago, and we need to finish that.